Talk, music, get it all.
24 hours.
On West Africa Democracy Radio. 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. here in Dakar and 7 p.m. in Abuja, Nigeria. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Here's our top stories. Protesters in Oyo State, southwest Nigeria demand release of abducted school children and teachers.
The ratio of the police we have to the population of Nigeria is nothing to write home about. Even some school does not even have a gate man.
Senegalese President Diomaye Faye pursues new investment opportunities and energy cooperation in Germany. Nigeria and Benin advance high-level bilateral talks over reopening shared borders. And Guinean President Doumbouya bans export of gold from the country, threatens legal action against violators.
L'or guinéen sera fondu en Guinée.
Guinean gold will be melted in Guinea, certified in Guinea, valued in Guinea before exporting it to international markets.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is a more edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to all of our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. We'll begin in Nigeria, where more than a decade after the federal government launched the Safe Schools initiative to protect students and teachers from attacks, fresh concerns are emerging over the safety of learning environments across Nigeria. The concerns come as protesters in Oyo State Southwest took to the streets demanding the release of school children and teachers abducted more than a month ago, raising questions about whether enough is being done to protect schools from insecurity. Correspondent Yechin Sasich reports.
Traffic was brought to a standstill along the busy Iwo Road interchange in Ibadan as protesters marched along the area demanding the release of school children and teachers abducted in Orire local government area of Oyo State. The protest has also reignited conversations around the Safe School initiative launched by the federal government in 2014 following the abduction of the Chibok schoolgirls in Borno State. The initiative was designed to strengthen school security, improve emergency response systems, and ensure that children can learn in safe environments. However, repeated incidents of school abductions in different parts of the country have left many questioning its effectiveness. Adeshina Lukuga is the chairman of the Magboro Community Development Committee.
In fact, we can say it's just a white elephant project that doesn't see the light of the day. A lot of people, when you discuss it with them, they will say, where is this happening? And where is the implementation? It's not effective.
Olukoga adds that government must consistently invest in preventive measures.
If we know, well, already we know that in Nigeria, the ratio of the police we have to the population of Nigeria is nothing to write home about compared to the schools now. At least if you can have community policing, that is, you have some like civil defense in some schools. Even some school does not even have a gate man.
For parents of the abducted pupils and teachers, the debate over school safety remains secondary to one urgent demand: the safe return of their loved ones. For WADR, Yechin Sasetu in Abuja.
In the meantime, Senegalese President Diomaye Faye is continuing his official visit to Germany, where efforts to attract investment and strengthen cooperation in the energy sector are high on the agenda. The visit forms part of Dakar's economic diplomacy strategy aimed at mobilizing foreign capital, technology and expertise to support the country's economic transformation and development goals. Sakule Janko reports.
Already, the Senegalese leader has met with officials of Siemens Healthineers, a German medical technology company, to explore opportunities for operations in the health sector, particularly in improving access to modern medical technologies and healthcare services. He also held discussions with Michael Fischer, Managing Director of Gulf Engineering, a German company that has been active in Senegal's energy and infrastructure sector for several years. Talks focused largely on expanding rural electrification projects and developing sustainable energy solutions across the country. President Faye highlighted the progress made through initiatives led by Senegal's Rural Electrification Agency, which have enabled communities far from the national power grid to gain access to electricity through solar energy. The discussions also explore ways of using renewable energy to support agriculture, including irrigation, food preservation and agro-processing, as Senegal seeks to improve productivity and create more economic opportunities in rural areas. Infrastructure development was another major focus of the meetings, with the President Faye stressing the need for increased investment in drainage systems, sanitation networks and flood control projects to address recurring flooding during the rainy season. The visit forms part of Dakar's broader economic diplomacy strategy, aimed at attracting foreign investment, technology and expertise to accelerate sustainable and inclusive growth.
Sankle Janko with that report. In the meantime, the International Monetary Fund has welcomed Senegal's efforts to improve public financial management and address concerns surrounding previously undisclosed public debt, following a week-long mission to Dakar. The IMF says progress has been made in reducing the country's budget deficit, but warns that debt-related risk remains significant as discussions continue on a possible new financing program. Francis Boniface completes the story.
The International Monetary Fund says it has taken note of Senegal's commitment to restoring fiscal transparency and strengthening public finance management following its latest assessment mission to Dakar. It has welcomed efforts by the country to improve budget governance, strengthen transparency, and advance institutional reforms designed to unify the management of public debt under a more coherent framework. According to the fund, Senegal's fiscal position has shown signs of improvement. Despite this progress, the IMF cautioned that fiscal vulnerabilities and debt-related risk remain elevated, underscoring the need for continued reforms and prudent economic management. Senegal reaffirmed its intention to negotiate a new program with the IMF as it seeks additional support for its economic recovery agenda. For its part, the fund reiterated its readiness to continue supporting Senegal's efforts to strengthen economic stability, improve governance, and restore confidence in public finances.
Francis Boniface filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Niger and Benin are continuing high-level discussions aimed at reopening their shared border. Joint expert committees established following the recent visit of Benin's new president, Wadr, to Niamey convened over the weekend in Cotonou. While officials note that discussions are progressing, Nigerian authorities have firmly outlined specific conditions that must be fulfilled before trade and movement can fully resume. Deborah Moore will complete the story.
The meeting of the Joint Expert Committees was chaired by Niger's Minister of Security, General Mohamed Toumba, and Benin's Minister of African Integration, Alhaji Bakari. Experts from both countries discussed several issues related to the reopening of the border, including security and defense, diplomacy, and economic cooperation. Niamey says it is in favor of reopening its border with Benin, but has set two key conditions. First, Niger wants a defense and security agreement based on the principle of non-aggression. Secondly, it is demanding full transparency regarding the presence and activities of foreign military forces operating near the border areas. According to international relations analyst Labo Yakuba, this firm stance by Niamey could be interpreted as an assertion of national sovereignty.
Nous pensons que cela vise à garantir.
We think that this aims to guarantee and establish the reopening of borders, not just as a strictly economic or diplomatic matter, but also to address the issue of national security. In any case, they demonstrate a posture of firmness and mistrust towards external influences.
The analyst further noted that Cotonou's response will likely depend on its own national interests and the security agreements it has signed with other countries.
Benin also has international commitments and diplomatic commitments with other countries. I think that at this level, Benin will weigh, in any case, the interest it has with Niger and the interest it has with foreign forces. I think that it is strictly a diplomatic matter.
Beyond the border issue, Niger and Benin also intend to revive their Joint Cooperation Commission. Both countries have pledged to strengthen cooperation in the fight against terrorism and banditry, which continue to affect several areas across the West African sub-region.
A report from our Niamey correspondent Yakuba Abibulai, presented there by Deborah Amowo. Now in Guinea, the authorities now prohibit the export of raw gold. President Mamadi Doumbouya requires that Guinean gold now be refined, certified and valued in Guinea before being placed on the world market. Companies that do not comply with this decision risk legal action or the withdrawal of the operating license. According to authorities, this measure is aimed to strengthen the Guinean economy and create more jobs in the mining sector. Christopher Teacher completes the story.
Gold mining companies are now mandated to melt their gold in Guinea before it is placed on the market. The decision was taken by the Guinean authority in April 2022, requiring mining companies to build refineries in Guinea for the processing of bauxite on site. The measure was reinforced during a high-level meeting over the weekend, which remains irreversible for President Mamadi Doumbouya.
Guinea will no longer continue to be content with being a supplier of raw materials to factories around the world. Guinean gold will be melted in Guinea, certified in Guinea, valued in Guinea before exporting it to international markets. Any operator who continues to export raw gold will have their approval suspended, will answer for its actions before the Guinean justice system without exception.
According to Guinean authorities, the decision is intended to boost the national economy and create more jobs for young citizens. Guinean economist Abdurrahman Balebe gives his opinion on this decision by the authorities.
It is always a very good decision to implement a policy regarding the local processing of raw materials. It will be something very interesting for the Guinean economy. But beyond that, gold is a safe haven. There will be real added value in the Guinean economy, and that will even see the stabilization of our currency.
Gold is one of the most exploited mineral resources in Guinea. Since January 2026, the country has exported 1,796 kilograms of gold, almost 1.8 tons. For several observers, this new measure has little chance of success because these gold companies already have refineries built abroad, which they supply with gold extracted in Guinea.
Christopher Tichel filed the report and voiced by Veronique Njai. Now, the world marked International Refugee Day on Saturday, June 20, with attention turning to the worsening displacement crisis across the Sahel, where millions have been forced from their homes by armed conflict, insecurity, and the impacts of climate change. Humanitarian agencies say the number of displaced people in the region continues to rise, placing increasing pressure on both affected communities and host populations. In response, aid organizations are stepping up efforts to provide emergency assistance and long-term support. Charles Bakum, Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Affairs for World Vision in West Africa, explains the details of assistance to refugees in the region.
Les besoins les plus urgents, c'est d'abord la sécurité alimentaire.
The most urgent needs are first and foremost food security, because approximately 3 million people in Chad, for example, are projected to be in their need of food security between June and August 2026, especially during the lean season. There are also shelter needs because there are over 71 million refugees and families in eastern Chad facing this need. The third element is protection and access to services, because because with reduced funding, registration centers have been cut back. There is the issue of health, access to water, hygiene and sanitation. And there is also child protection, because population displacement inevitably leads to problems of child protection. Charles Buckham, Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs and External Affairs for World Vision in West Africa. Meanwhile, the World Vision reveals that more than 10,000 Burkinabe asylum seekers have sought refuge in Ghana, driven from their homes by a mix of violent extremism and severe climate-related shocks. The organization is now raising the alarm, urging international partners to provide sustained emergency support for both the displaced populations and the struggling host communities in northern Ghana. Nadi Tete reports.
Speaking at a stakeholder engagement in Bolgatanga to mark World Refugee Day 2026, World Vision Ghana Strategy and Integrated Programs Director Joshua Roland Beidou said the worsening crisis in Burkina Faso and the wider Sahel region continued to force thousands of people across Ghana's northern border in search of safety. He noted that the asylum seekers were being hosted in communities including Tarikom, Zini, Felmo, Bansi, and Issa Katinga, and stressed that children remained among the most vulnerable among displaced populations. According to him, many refugee children face disrupted education, psychological trauma, and increased risks of abuse and exploitation. Mr. Beidou explained that World Vision Ghana, through its border project and in partnership with the Ghana Refugee Board, was supporting refugee hosting communities in the Upper East and Upper West regions. He said the initiative focused on protection, livelihood, and social cohesion to ensure both refugees and host communities benefited from humanitarian assistance. Mr. Beidou called on government, development partners, and donors to maintain long-term support for refugees, arguing that efforts should move beyond emergency relief towards sustainable protection, integration, and peaceful coexistence. Meanwhile, the Upper East Regional Coordinator of the Ghana Refugee Board, Sika Agbeshi, reported that more than 5,500 refugees had been registered in the region, with over 2,300 relocated to the Tarikom refugee camp where humanitarian assistance are being provided. He appealed for increased support, particularly skills training programs to help refugees secure sustainable livelihoods and integrate into their host communities. Local authorities have also commended humanitarian organizations and development partners for complementing government efforts in addressing the growing refugee situation in northern Ghana. For WEDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and around the world on wadr.org. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Protesters in Oyo State, southwest Nigeria demand release of abducted school children and teachers. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye pursues new investment opportunities and energy cooperation in Germany. Nigeria and Benin advance high-level bilateral talks over reopening shared border. And Guinean President Doumbouya bans export of gold from the country, threatens legal action against violators. Still ahead, we do have a guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We are streaming live on wadr.org and also follow live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. We turn to the Malian capital of Bamako, where hundreds of Muslim worshippers mobilized for a mass gathering to call for immediate national solidarity and reconciliation. Organized by the High Islamic Council of Mali over the weekend, the mass prayer initiative comes at a critical time as the transition government works toward domestic stability. Here's a report.
The gathering provided an opportunity for Muslim religious leaders to emphasize the importance of spiritual values in preventing conflict and strengthening social cohesion. In the face of the security and social challenges confronting Mali, participants issued a strong appeal for unity and collective responsibility, according to Salam Traoré, repertoire of the event.
Le Haut Conseil islamique du Mali, à travers son président,
the Islamic Council of Mali, through its president, its members, and all Muslim religious leaders, commits to implementing the principles and provisions of this declaration in order to strengthen the unity of Muslims, cleanse the religious space, improve preaching action, and preserve national security.
L'action de prédication et préserver la sécurité nationale.
Also present at the gathering was Mali's Minister of State for Reconciliation, Peace and National Cohesion, Ishmael Wagi, who reaffirmed the government's commitment to continuing efforts aimed at restoring peace.
La réconciliation nationale ne peut être pleinement réalisée.
National reconciliation cannot be fully achieved without the active contribution of religious authorities, mosques, Quranic schools, Islamic associations, and spaces for preaching play a decisive role in spreading the values of peace, tolerance, and responsibility. We encourage all preachers, imams, and religious leaders to pursue their noble mission within the ethical Islamic framework of wisdom and constructive dialogue.
The mobilization of Muslims faithful comes as Mali continues to grapple with significant security challenges. The High Islamic Council of Mali says it intends to contribute to strengthening social cohesion and supporting initiatives designed to achieve lasting peace and reinforce national unity.
Aliu Cham in Bamako filed a report and voiced by Christopher Teacher. Elsewhere in Liberia, the long-standing land crisis has resurfaced as the country's land authority moves to fight against widespread property fraud and overlapping claims. This urgency has been amplified by a high-profile ownership dispute between a member of parliament, Representative Samuel Enders, and a private businessman. The situation is reigniting public debate over the vulnerability of the country's land administration systems. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
Nationwide, the Liberia Land Authority has recorded more than 1,000 cases involving multiple or double sales of land, with Mosurado County accounting for a significant share of the disputes. Speaking on the growing crisis, Liberia Land Authority Chairman Samuel Kpakio said the institution needs quasi-judiciary and prosecutorial powers to effectively address the increasing number of land disputes across the country.
I'm very frustrated about it. The partnership with the Supreme Court to give us that quasi-power where we can adjudicate cases. Right now, we are building capacity. Eventually, it is my hope and it's my dream before the end of my term at the Liberia Territorial Chairman, we get to that, the establishment of tax rules will all be done.
The discussion comes as a land ownership dispute involving Representative Samuel Enders and a private businessman continues to attract public attention. Representative Enders maintains that the disputed property in Nangbe town legally belongs to him.
I saw a group of men, they broke down the fence I had, broke the cornerstone, they had AFL personnel, they had PSU, and they said they were going to build. So I got there, I said, why are you destroying these things? And I said, well, you're not going to build on my property.
The private businessman, Odisha Kamon, however, has rejected the claim.
I bought the property since 2019. We had deed to that land. And the title that we have is backed by our grantor deed. Representative Samuel Enders came, he began to destroy all the material that we brought, broke all the shovels.
In recent years, government officials and local authorities have repeatedly warned that unresolved land conflicts are undermining investment, delaying development projects, and fuel intentions in several counties. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
Our discussion is on the growing displacement crisis in West Africa and the Sahel. This was a situation, a major concern, highlighted during the commemoration of World Refugee Day on Saturday, June 20. In the Sahel region, millions of people have been forced from their homes by armed conflict, insecurity, and the impacts of climate change. To discuss the challenges facing displaced populations and the humanitarian response in West Africa, we're joined by Charles Bakum, Regional Director of Emergency, Humanitarian Affairs and External Affairs for World Vision in West Africa.
Selon le HCR, les projections montrent que d'ici fin de l'année.
According to UNHCR, projections show that by the end of the fiscal year, more than 5 million displaced persons or asylum seekers will be identified across the region. Within this group, we have over 1 million refugees and asylum seekers. What is truly challenging is that this is all driven by the fact that there is a 17% increase in refugees and asylum seekers and a 16% increase in internally displaced persons. But a third of this population is actually in Burkina Faso. Let me give you an example. Chad alone hosts more than 2.2 million people forcibly displaced, including over 1 million refugees, primarily from Sudan, the Central African Republic and Cameroon.
Venant principalement du Soudan, de la Centrafrique et du Cameroun.
So what are the most urgent needs of refugees and host communities in the Sahel?
Les besoins les plus urgents, c'est d'abord la sécurité alimentaire.
The most urgent needs are first and foremost food security, because approximately 3 million people in Chad, for example, are projected to be in dire need of food security between June and August 2026, especially during the lean season. There are also shelter needs because there are over 71 million refugees and families in eastern Chad facing this need. The third element is protection and access to services, because with reduced funding, registration centers have been cut back. There is the issue of health, access to water, hygiene and sanitation. And there is also child protection, because population displacement inevitably leads to problems of child protection.
You are in Bamako, the Malian capital. Can you share some of the main interventions by World Vision in addressing these problems?
Oui, ce que nous faisons principalement, c'est l'appui en cash.
Yes, what we primarily do is provide cash and voucher support to enable vulnerable groups facing difficult situations to access food, water, hygiene and sanitation by drilling boreholes, rehabilitating wells and building latrines for displaced people. We focus on livelihoods to help these populations earn an income, and we also provide child protection and education activities to enable children to move around, stay in school, and avoid the negative effects of child marriage. We also carry out health and nutrition activities to support mothers and their children in particular. But we also do a lot of advocacy work, and we do this with other stakeholders to draw donors' attention to the difficult situation faced by displaced populations and refugees.
The drying up of funding is affecting humanitarian operations worldwide. How does this impact World Vision's work in the Sahel?
Yes, this has a strong impact on us, and with the reduction of these funds, we are forced to reduce the scope of intervention. We are forced to reduce the number of beneficiaries. We are forced to choose the activities, but also the populations that will be more in need, and this forces us to leave some vulnerable populations behind.
Charles Barkham is the Regional Director of Emergency Humanitarian Affairs for World Vision in West Africa. All right, and to the FIFA World Cup 2026, it continues across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, with teams battling for places in the round of 32 in the tournament expanded 48-team format. One of the standout results saw Egypt claim a historic 3-1 victory over New Zealand in Vancouver. The Pharaohs came from behind, with Captain Mohamed Salah playing a key role as Egypt moved to the top of Group G and closer to qualification. Elsewhere, Spain strengthened its position in Group H with a commanding 4-0 win over Saudi Arabia, while Japan also recorded a 4-0 victory over Tunisia. Germany edged Cote d'Ivoire 2-1 in another closely contested encounter. Today's fixtures include France against Iraq and Senegal taking on Norway in Group I action. In Group J, Argentina is currently leading 1-0 in its encounter, with Austria as second half gets underway. Meanwhile, Algeria meets Jordan in a crucial match that could shift the race for the knockout stage. Well, the 2026 World Cup, the largest in history, features 48 teams competing across 16 host cities, with the final scheduled for July 19 in New York, New Jersey. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudu for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms: X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn at WADR English. Coming up next at the bottom of the hour is a repeat broadcast of It's You Speaking, WADR's Opinion Poll Series. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. in the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Graft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.